Right, welcome everybody to our weekly masterclass. This week we've got a look at formation. I love back three formation, so I'm really excited about this one. We're looking at the 3-4-2-1, could be a 3-4-3, but more of an emphasis on the box midfield. So Kevin's going to take us through a short presentation. It's going to be interactive, so any questions you've got, drop them in the chat and we'll address them straight away. But yeah, Kevin, over to you. Let's get started.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jamie. So 3-4-2-1 with the box four in midfield. It's just a shape, right? It's just a starting formation. And I think that on a theory level, I could talk for hours about this formation on a theory level, but I'm going to break down how I've actually implemented it within a team that I was managing and what the principles were around it. So first question is, why 3-4-2-1? And I guess I can only answer that from my point of view. And the team that I had, I did a little assessment of the players. There's a lot of good players who could play through the middle of the pitch, but there weren't so many good players who could play in the wide areas. So I had two very good, very quick, very athletic fullbacks that I thought could play wing backs, but we had nothing in terms of out-and-out creative wide players or inside forwards or people that could come into the number 10 role. So I wanted to get a bit of structure and get the best passers of the ball in the middle of the pitch. And I think if you've got good passers in the middle of the pitch, then they can spray the ball anywhere. If you stick your good passers out wide, it's more difficult for them to sort of influence the game and get on the ball effectively. Another reason was I thought we could be tactically better than teams, if I'm being honest. Just the level we were at, the level's not great from a player point of view, and I'm not meaning any disrespect here, but great from a tactical point of view. So I thought we could tactically manipulate teams very effectively using this formation. And the most important consideration of all was wanted to get all the best players on the park at the same time, and this sort of Christmas tree-like formation allowed me to do that. And you know, when I say the best players, I mean the right blend of players, right? So at the top level, you're lucky because you'll have a centre back who can pass, who can dribble, who can beat players 1v1, who can head the ball, who has pace, who can dictate the game. But at the level I was working at, you don't have that luxury, so you need to get the right blend of players. So you need a centre half who can head the ball. You need another centre half who can maybe take it and play. And you need another centre half who maybe has pace and could sweep in behind when the team makes mistakes. So that's why this formation was chosen, essentially. Loads of strength down the middle. And again, it's just a starting formation. It's just starting positions. The key thing for me was the principles around it. And I tried to keep these principles really, really simple. Think forward, play forward. Dominate your individual battles. Movement is hard to defend against. Be aggressive when we lose the ball. React, press, provide width and depth when we're on the ball. And when we don't have the ball, don't defend the whole pitch. Really simple principles. Really, really simple stuff that was taught at training every single week. And if we just magnify that out a little bit into the sub-principles, every Thursday before a game at the weekend, I would send out a pack to the players to remind them of the principles and remind them of how we wanted to play. And that would be broken down into these sub-principles. So in possession principles, for example, and you can see here that I feel like starting positions are everything in football. If you can get your starting positions correct in your position, then that is a huge, huge factor. And I'll explain why later in the presentation. But I always said to the players, give your teammates a chance to get into their position. So even if that meant passing back to the goalkeeper to start again or whatever, just give your teammates a chance. Because at a certain level of football, it gets a bit chaotic. It's just transitional. You make two passes, you give the ball away. The opposition make two passes and give the ball away. And it's really frantic. And if we wanted to dominate tactically, we could not get into that frantic battle on the pitch. We needed to give our teammates a chance to get into their starting positions so then we could dominate the ball through our triangles and our structure. And I'll explain that in a second as well. So we always said the players in the half space are the most dangerous. We have to get players on the ball in the half space. So that was the wide centre halves, and that was our two number 10s in that box four midfield. And I'm going to break down all of these principles just very, very briefly, starting with our build, so our goal kicks. What did I ask the players to do in these situations? Before I do that, JB, any questions about what I've said so far?
Just a couple of observations. I mean, it's really interesting to hear you talk about. You've talked a lot about profile of player there and the type of player. And I think a mistake a lot of coaches will make is picking a formation first and having a preference for a formation. And it's wild. You almost see it with Amorim at Man United of a formation over everything, when you need to start with your principles and profile of player that fit into the right positions. And then you layer on things like what's the opponent going to do and thinking about how I might tactically overcome that. So no, really interested. And the second observation was I loved how you talked about starting positions, because in back three formations, what can really hurt you is if the wing backs just are too deep and you can get boxed in as a five too often. And if we pass to the wing backs too early and we don't allow those wing backs to get higher up the pitch, and in your previous slide you showed your wing backs really, really high, which is again really important. Otherwise, in the transitionary moments, you're just going to be bogged into your own final third. So no questions, just really interesting on those points so far.
Yeah, and I think that, my preferred formation is 4-2-3-1, as you see from the blue team here, but you have to adapt as a coach. And you mentioned Amorim, he's got his principles and he will not adapt from those. And you know what? If that's his job and he gets paid on that basis, then fair enough, I respect that. But I do think you've got to be a bit more adaptable as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
So everything I'm going to show you is against the 4-2-3-1, because that's the formation I probably know the best, not 3-4-2-1. But as I said, you have to adapt and you have to get your best players on the park somehow, but in the right structure. So the first thing to say is, before we move on to build, what we wanted to do was we wanted to have connections all over the park. But the most important connections for me were through the two defensive midfielders. So everything needed to connect through them. And by that, I mean, we had to make triangles, right? So you can see here there are lots of triangles, but the main triangles for me were through these two players here. So we've got a wide triangle here, which was really, really important for us. The defensive midfielder, the centre back, and the wing back. We've got an inside triangle between the defensive midfielder, the attacking midfielder, the striker, and then we've got a triangle to the furthest forward centre back there. So really, really important that we had connections and passes available all over the park. And if you start to look at it compared to the 4-2-3-1, even this is a bit deep, but you can start to see those connections become really, really important, where the spaces are, because these three players in here cannot mark these four players. The defensive midfield.
What's interesting, sorry, Kev, just to come in there, because I find it really interesting how we set up from goal kicks as well. The thing with your wing backs being high there, what that does is give those wide wingers in the 4-2-3-1 something to really think about. Because if they do aggressively press onto to press the centre backs quite quickly, we've got the option into the wing backs from the goalkeeper straight away. But it's just adding those question marks in the wingers' minds to then allow the centre backs to play and drive.
So, Jamie, this is how you'd expect a team to play out from a goal kick. And I've deliberately showed this slide because this is what we did initially, but it wasn't working for us. Okay, so we were too deep and there was several problems with it, which I won't go into because we don't have a lot of time to go into that. But I changed this, and I changed it to this, right, which looks really, really strange. And it was to combat basically the full press. So we went over 3 different pressing scenarios with the team. So if the opposition did go really high. Sorry, someone jumping in?
No,
sorry. Get rid of this. So if the opposition did press really, really high, what we wanted to do was we wanted to have a balance in terms of what was available to play out to against what was available up the pitch. I'll try and make sense of that in a second, but if they push their 9 and their 10 right up, even if they did an offset press to show us maybe here they wanted to play this pass so they could get up and press, or whatever the clever thing they tried to do, we tried to manipulate them so that they would second guess their press and they would commit more bodies to the press. And by that, I mean, on this first pass, which was really, really key, we needed some movement from our 2 6s. So if this person dropped in short here, could it attract their attention? Could it attract their attention? And if it did, that's the time for one of these attacking midfielders or number 10s to drop into space. And you can see here we've pinned the opposition back 4 by getting these wing backs really high, as you said, JB, and our striker really high. If that didn't work and this kind of thing happened, and we knew it would happen, we would play our strongest striker who could hold up the ball. So she would drop there, ball would go there, and she was more than capable of holding that player off. And then we'd try and get support around to then go in behind into all that space really, really quickly. So the key was, as I've said so far, these two defensive midfielders and their ability to manipulate the opposition and manipulate the space. If this happened, then goalkeeper would just do that because it's a 5v4, right? It's a 5v4. There's no point in messing about. You have to take what the opposition are giving you. You have to play it over their heads, and you have to get up the pitch as quickly as possible. So that's how we would combat that. But when we had this situation, it was easier for them to then sort of offset their press a little bit more and sit a little bit deeper because our two centre backs were here, and for the ball to then be played out was a little bit more difficult for me. Plus, we didn't have any wide options in key areas. So if that happened and it wasn't tracked, this player then could go into here, this player could go, this player could come inside, this player could come inside, and this player could drop deep, for example. So there were rotations all over the place, but we needed to give the player on the ball options, whether that was the goalkeeper or the single centre half. So that's how we combat the full press. And as I said, it was literally because it was 6v6 in this area, 5v5, 5v4, sorry, in this area. So why would you not take what the opposition are giving you and just kick it over their heads and start playing from further up the park? If we did that and we all had one centre back in here, it's a lot less dangerous than having two centre halves in here and then playing a very, very risky offside line, because then if they won the first contact and the ball came in here, it would be more difficult for us to defend. So if we made sure we had two players in this space and a player in this space, we've always got a defensive rest structure against the counter-attack if the ball went up the park and came back. Hopefully I've explained that well enough and it makes sense. Next scenario, what we encountered was a half press. So what we did was the same thing. We tried to pin them. We tried to pin them with a 5-player in attack solution. And what we tried to do was then make that first pass and then see what would happen. So if the first pass went here and this player curved his run, or her run rather, to cut off the goalkeeper and the centre half, can we then provide support here to maybe attract this player? Or if this player stays, the ball would go there. If this player gets attracted in here, the ball would just go into this space, and away we go. We're up the park. We've escaped the press straight away. So again, these defensive midfielders were the key to manipulating that space. If the defenders were doing, if the pressers were doing that and they were going to the ball, he was going to the goalkeeper, again, that's free. So it was about making them second guess. And as you said earlier on, JB, the wide players here are kind of in a situation where if they go here, then that leaves that open. So they have to sit and half press. And these two players are isolated in the press, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 against 2. So we would always get out. If it didn't work for any reason, say that player got the ball and that pass is blocked and that pass is blocked, then it'd be up to one of these players to provide support and the rest to pin. So we've always got an out ball up the park. And that was the philosophy we took there. And the reason we did that was because it's 6v4 here. Why would you not play it short and play 6v4 against the 5v6 up here?
Yeah, those wide centre backs are really important in your previous image, and the disciplines stay wide because they give that defensive midfielder the extra space. Yeah,
and people would say you're absolutely crazy for doing this. Like, you're absolutely mental for doing this. Say he passes it there, it's a goal. Okay, we'll take that risk. We'll take that risk. If that ball then goes into here, that player needs to come in, that player needs to come in, and that player needs to get there. So it's not just about what's happening in an attacking sense. As soon as that ball has escaped the first line of the press, everyone then needs to get into shape, and everyone then needs to get into a structure to prevent us from being counter-attacked quickly. So you've got to think of it from two sides of the game. And I am rushing through this a little bit, but it's just because of time. But as I say, you have to take what the opposition's giving you. There's no point in sticking to a philosophy. I want to play short. I want to play it from the back. Okay, the opposition are pressing with 7 players. How are you going to play it from the back now? There's no point. Kick it long. The opposition press with 4 against 6. Use your goalkeeper as an extra player and build properly and cleanly. Escape the first line of the press, and then you'll be attacking with an extra number and making this at the top end of the park 6v6.
The whole point of playing out for the back is to create an overload up front, though. So and you'll see Edison go straight to Haaland how many times for Man City? That is playing out from the back. It's just a more direct route of playing out from the back. And I think we need to remember football's an invasion game. Our objective is to get it in the goal and get it up the pitch as quickly as possible. It's just the mechanic of how we do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? With this box four in midfield, you're nearly always going to outnumber the opposition in the middle of the park. So the key is to get the ball to one of those defensive midfielders as quickly as you can. If you're building out from the back, this is because if you can do that, one of them's free, and then they can drive into the next line, and then they can try to start committing defenders to come away from players that are absolutely dangerous, our attacking midfielders and our striker, for example. So that was the philosophy we always tried to let the players know in training and practice on day in, day out, essentially. So scenario 3 was no press. Now we started to see this because we were successfully manipulating teams into committing players into a press and then bypassing that first line of press, even the second line of press, if we went straight to the striker. And then essentially we were so good at the top end of the park. I mean, this player was fantastic. This player was fantastic. And I think this player scored 20 goals in 7 games at the start of the season or something crazy like that. So we were really dangerous when we got when we got the ball to our attacking players. So teams kind of started to sit off a little bit. And yeah, okay, they're not going to press, play it there, drive up the pitch. Are we going to attract this player? If we can attract this player, can we get this player to come in here so we can bypass that first line again? You know, can we just get this player to stand on the ball? If they don't want to press, just stand on the ball for a bit. You know, what the opposition going to do? If it's not happening, play a little bounce pass. But the key is we need to attract the first line of the press somehow. If we don't attract that, then we're just going to play into this 4-5 or even 5-4 at times, and it becomes more difficult. So we have to try and get one of our free defensive midfielders on the ball, but not like that. That's not bypassing any line of a press. That's not doing anything. So if it's a dribble, to attract this player goes in here, for example. It could go out to the wide area, then it could be bounced and then go in. Whatever the players wanted to do. We didn't prescribe what to do. We just prescribed how to escape the first line of the press cleanly. But we needed to attract that first line for me. Whether it was this player goes here before they get pressed, I didn't care. Really didn't care. That player would just rotate in, ball would go in there, or the ball would go there, to go there, to go there. Whatever it wasn't important how it was done, but we knew what we had to do game in, game out. And that we were really successful with that because, as I said, with the box 4 midfield, you outnumber a lot of teams. So 2v0, there's no point in kicking it long. There's no point in trying to play the pass from a deep position. The point is to try and get into this space up the top end of the park, attract this player, and make it a more even game numbers-wise going forward. So that's building. Any questions on that? Anyone? JB, I can't see the chat, so I'm assuming there's no questions so far.
No, go on.
Okay. So creating and finishing the attack. So for me, it was really important to get our 2 number 10s on the ball, or at least one of them, while we were building the attack. Or if we couldn't get them on the ball, could they make that dangerous half-space run between full-back and centre-back, which is difficult for the opposition to attract. So we mainly focused on that in training. Again, box 4 is great because you can get one of those defensive midfielders on the ball. One of them is always going to be free. They're usually only up against a 10. If they're up against a 10 and an 8, that must mean that one of our number 10s are free. So someone in the middle of the park, one of our best players is always going to be free. We need to get the ball to them as quickly as we can. And if we cannot get the ball to them, we need to get the ball to the striker. So that was our philosophy, and we had many, many ways to do that. Let me give you an example. So say from my last example, we've built the attack to here. The opposition are sitting deep because they're either protecting the lead or they're not wanting to attack. They're just going to sit in. They're trying to frustrate us. What we would say is that this centre half needs to dribble, needs to attract that press. And even if it went wide before it came in here, we would need this player to drive. The purpose of getting the defensive midfielder to drive in the opposite half, again, was just to attract someone. Can we attract them? Can you go in there? Can the ball go there? Or if they would narrow up, then can we go there? And then can we get you in the box and you in the box and you in the box and you on the edge of the box for the delivery? And my dream was to get one wing back to play the ball to the other wing back and score. That would have been my ultimate dream in this team. It didn't happen, but that's how high our wing backs were expected to play, because we knew we had security behind them in terms of the wide centre halves. So again, just going back, in this area when we were building the attack, it was really key for me that if they were to sit deep, could we, sorry, this is a bit messy, could we get into a situation where we're either doing an up, back, and through combination to get a player in, or could we manipulate the game so that we're playing it in there, this player's coming in, can we get the ball there, and can we actually tilt them? So the ball's on this side now, so naturally the defensive team would come across. Could we tilt them so that we could either get this player in or this player in on a switcher play? And the amount of times we did that was, I don't even know. I lost count eventually. We just kept doing it over and over again. So we progressed the ball through our defensive midfielders, out to our wide centre halves who would come in the pitch a little bit onto the ball, come onto the ball to switch it, or we would then look to get our wing backs straight in from our defensive midfielders. That was our tactic all the time in these situations. And again, I'm going really quickly just because of time considerations. But say we had this situation where a team's probably more realistic, where a team were narrow against us and pressing the ball. Let me just go back a little bit. Say we had that situation where there was space in between the lines, then this player would have to go and pin the two centre halves, but then it's up to these two players to drop into that space and receive the ball, get turned, and suddenly you've got runners and we're 5v4. So we killed teams in three different ways: up, back, and throughs into our wing backs, or into our defensive midfielder, out to our wide centre half, who would be coming onto the ball on their strongest foot to switch the play because we tilted a team and left the other half of the pitch open. Or if they were going to come up the pitch a little bit and press us, can we time it? Sorry, first of all, can we pin their back four, and then can we time it so one of the 10s could drop into the space, get turned, and get running at the back four? And I think those three ways of trying to break down a team were really, really useful. Again, I'm going 100. I've been over these examples. I'm going 100 miles an hour. But the main thing for me was, if we got the ball into this position, either through a wide centre half or a wing back, I watched a presentation by Russell Martin. I can't remember. I think it was a training ground guru. And he talked about casting a net over the opposition. So if we managed to get the ball into this situation and cross it and it was cleared, can we have a rest defence structure that allows us to retain the ball, start the attack again, so we get sustained pressure on the opposition? So if one of those three ways doesn't work, how can we ensure that we retain the ball after it's cleared and start the attack again? And I think this is a really, really good concept, and one that suits the 3-4-2-1 really well, because you've got these two number 6s that just sit, and if the ball is cleared, they can pick it up and they can restart the attack from there, because it's usually 3v1, and that's maybe not realistic. Maybe this player's here and this player's here, but you can see here we've got numbers. If we can pin the opposition in, we've got numbers behind the ball to retain it and start the attack again in different ways. So that was a key principle of ours: pinning the opposition in, not letting them out, and making it very difficult for them. Again, JB, I've whizzed through that just because of the time, but any questions from you?
No, that's a really interesting point, actually, because if someone, I suppose, at any standard of football, probably the lower end of football, their centre-backs would be probably higher up the pitch, right? So they're not casting that net. The rest defence isn't quite as high. And if you move your centre-backs probably a little bit deeper to work back towards your own goal, then if the transition happens, all of a sudden there's a big gap in the middle of the park, and then the turnover of play can happen, and then you're in a little bit of trouble all of a sudden. So that point on a rest defence is really interesting.
Yeah, and say they'd had this, and we need to be clever about this, right? So that would happen, and these two would maybe just sit, or one of them would just sit a bit deeper. And it's not about the 3-4-2-1. It's about what are your principles within that. So what are your principles, and how do players know what they should do in certain scenarios? Well, it's common sense. You need to outnumber the opposition and build, but when you are in rest defence, you also need to be smart about it. Not everyone can charge forward and score goals, unfortunately. It's just one of those things. I think Aaron's joining the meeting as well. So that was the attacking point of view. So again, cast the net, if we get players into the half space, it's really, really key. Can we get them on the ball, or can we work the ball on a switch? Out of possession, just really quickly, I think there's a problem with teams trying to defend the whole pitch these days. So if the ball's on the left-hand side, the opposition have got it on the left-hand side. I see teams trying to defend the whole pitch, and there's gaps all over the place. It's crazy, especially in the Premier League. I don't know if it's deliberate. Obviously, smarter coaches than me there. But I was always taught if you're compact and you're defending in relation to the ball, you're difficult to break down. That's the basic principle. If you're not compact and there's gaps everywhere, then you're not difficult to break down. A runner will get you, or a 1v1 player will get you. It's just what it is. So we had a real problem with that. And we said to the players was, when we don't have the ball, you mentioned earlier on about the wing backs collapsing, JB, and it's a really difficult role to play in the 3-4-2-1. You need to be fit, you need to be athletic, but you also need to be aware that after 60 minutes, your time might be up and you might need to come and sit on the bench because we need fresh legs on. Because you are up and down in this system. You're probably the hardest working player in this system, if I'm being honest. So what we said was, in the opposition build, if they escape the press, then we need to collapse into a back five as soon as possible. We need our two sitters in midfield. So as you can see from this image, this is going to be very difficult to play against. Very, very difficult to play against. But what we found was, if the ball went out there, these two players would just still be out here because they're marking players or they're marking the space. They think they're doing a good job. When in reality, now, if the opposition do that, they start to move across and then they start to outnumber us in this key area. Whereas we're over here trying to defend the whole pitch. We tried to show the players videos. We tried to do it in training. It's a simple concept that I don't think players grasp, because they've got a player that they need to mark. That player's all the way out here on the touchline. The ball's all the way over here. So why wouldn't you mark that player? I think maybe some players have been taught that when they're younger or something, but it's a false concept. So we got to a situation where we eventually defended like this. So if the opposition did that, fair enough, right? Hold my hands up. I've got it wrong. If the opposition did that, okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 passes. On the fourth pass, I would expect us to be doing this to get across the pitch. So I mentioned hard work earlier on. That actually is a fundamental in football. You know, you can control how much effort and what your work rate is in a match. I said this to the players: you can't control the outcome. You know, you might make a mistake which costs us a goal, which costs us the 3 points. Fair enough. That's fine. Absolutely fine. But if we make a mistake because we haven't got across or out to the ball quickly enough, that's not acceptable, in my opinion. You're in control of that, and you can influence what the opposition do from an attacking point of view. So we try to defend in relation to where the ball is with a back five, a 2, and we would always say to the opposite side, number 10, you need to fill in. So the ball's on this side, this player needs to fill that space, because if they don't, you can see there's a massive gap here. The opposition might do that, and this player's then 1v1. If that player then comes in and that happens, it's a little bit more difficult to get that 1v1 on the go. And it's a lot of hard work in the system, because if the ball again is over here, this player's got to get out to the ball. No, sorry, should have had more slides on the go. But again, if the ball's over here and this player just fills in there, you can see that we're going with a 5-3, maybe a spare player to go and close the ball down, and a striker who's high up the park.
I think there's probably some accepted risk in there as well, right? Because you're not going to be able to, well, with a back three, you're probably going to have to accept that the opposition fullbacks, if they're playing a 4, are going to have quite a bit of the ball, because that's going to feel like the spare player for the opposition quite a bit. So how much can they hurt us if they've got possession there in their own half? And like you say, you've got tucked across in a compact block. I think there's times when you probably accept a certain amount of risk in the opposition because you can't press at all times. But it's an interesting, I was going to ask a question at some point. I know we're running out of time, but I think back three formations, 3-4-2-1, 3-5-2 are very powerful in possession. You've got a really strong spine. You've got key overloads in all the key areas. There's risks when you're out of possession. You've done a really good job of explaining a lot of those risks away, especially in transitionary moments. If we could talk about that for a second, if you lose the ball in midfield, the ball turns over, you're vulnerable down the sides of your back three all of a sudden, and clever opposition will quickly come to the fact that if they clip a few balls down the channels, when the ball does turn over in possession, then they can get quite a bit of success from two wide players in maybe a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. What was your solutions for situations like that?
We tried to prevent that by asking this player to stay as high as possible. Now, that doesn't prevent that, because that race against that player probably makes no sense. However, the key for me was, okay, we get breached. We're going to get breached. Happens all the time in football. The ball goes in there and the opposition get in there. How quickly can we get back in to protect that most dangerous area of the pitch for us? And that was in front of the goalkeeper. So we accepted that risk, especially in transition, JB, as you say. It was a real danger, because if we're building, for example, and sorry, let me make this more realistic. If we're building and this player gives the ball away, that player spins the channel straight away and that ball goes there, fine, absolutely fine. We're going to have to accept that. That's a risk. However, we're outnumbering the opposition, so we give the ball away. It's a technical error for me. There must have been a free player somewhere. Why did we not find that free player? That'd be my first protocol. But yeah, as long as that player is spinning the channel and going wide, we have to accept that risk. That's just the limitation of the formation, unfortunately. I know that doesn't answer your question very well, but
no, it's just your approach more than anything was interesting, because I mean, you think about principles and what do you do in those transitionary moments. Well, if we can't win the ball back straight away, do we just accept that everyone's got to work really hard to get back into a compact shape, like you said before? Yeah,
that's it. And if they play it down the middle, then this player hopefully picks up the goalkeeper. Yeah. I see a lot of goalkeepers these days playing. There doesn't seem to be in between. They're either playing there or they're playing here. You know, in relation to the ball. Okay, if the ball's here, yes, at the level we were playing at, that is never happening. That ball is never going in the goal from here. If it's here and the goalkeeper's there, then I'd be really worried. Really worried. But the goalkeeper needs to sweep in this formation, simply because we need a bit of protection, especially if that player gets dragged out wide through a clever run or something and that ball goes down the middle. You need an extra player in there to go and sweep. I have stuff on build, but I don't think we've got time, Jamie, unless you want me to quickly do it.
I think we can have another couple of minutes if you've got time.
Yeah, let me just reset this back to where it was, where I started messing around with it. Almost there. Right. Okay, so our press on their build was probably a little bit different to a lot of people's. So we wanted these three players at the top end of the park to work as hard as possible, our 2 10s and our striker. So we wanted solid protection in the middle of the park, right in the center here, because we wanted them to kick it long, because we thought if any team kicks it long against us, 9 times out of 10, we're going to win the ball. Okay, so again, that goalkeeper would be here. But so we wanted them to kick it long. We wanted to force them to kick it long. And what we wanted to do was entice them maybe to go a bit wider, because, you know, a wide player against a wide centre half, it's a no contest. We'll win that every single time. So we kind of left that option available for the goalkeeper, and that's a long way for that ball to go, and we were confident we could get out to the ball if the goalkeeper did that. But at the top end of the park, we offset the press a little bit, so we would identify who the weakest player was, right? So usually at the level we were playing at, there would be a right-footed centre half here instead of a left-footed centre half, okay? Or the other way around. Let me make this more realistic in that scenario. So right-footed, left centre half here. So we'd offset the press. We'd go, okay, go and play that pass. That's fine. We don't mind that at all. Play that pass. And then I think Aaron's got a question. I'll come to him in a second. So play that pass, and we will close those options off, and then we'll start to press the ball. Now, a right-footed centre half, okay, they might use the left foot and they might go there. But a right-footed centre half will then try and play into a very, very dangerous area, and also an area of strength for us. But say they play the ball here. We've got a wing back come up. All we do is what I mentioned earlier on. We just shuffle across and go, okay, are you good enough to beat us and get out of the press in this situation? So that first pass was key for us, because we wanted them to put it to the weakest player. If they did go longer, as I said, like we wanted them to, as I said, we would then win that first contact. And then if they were going to go as deep as this against those three players, then it was game over for them as far as I'm concerned. But the most important thing for me was we shut off any forward options apart from the ones that we wanted, and that was the mismatch, the usual mismatch of a wide player against a wide centre half. And that's what it looks like on the other side. So this player would press, and it worked every time. When you're pressing with three, I think it's a risk, but you have to have that solidity in the middle of the park. I'll finish off, JB, and we'll come to Aaron. So for me, it was key. Principles. Players should know what they're doing, and they should know where to stand in relation to those principles. That's everything in football, regardless of what formation that you pick or what system you select. Done.
Good, that was brilliant, mate. Thank you. Really, really good. And I think that last point as well, and we mentioned it at the start, but people generally and coaches generally will pick a formation before they even think about what their principles are or really define their principles or commit them to paper. And I'd really encourage everyone to commit your principles of play to paper and then pick style of play, formation based on the players you've got and the principles that you want them to adhere to. But that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you, mate.
No
Do we have a question from Aaron?
I think Aaron had his hand up. I will need to figure out how to let Aaron ask the question. Wait a second.
Unless you can drop it in the chat quickly, Aaron.
Aaron, could you type your question in the chat? Because I don't think I can put your microphone on, mate. Sorry.
Okay, I should write it.
Oh, there you are.
I'm wrong.
Okay. My question is I want to understand the laws and the responsibilities of two DMs and two attacking midfielders during transition to attack and transition to defend. If you can clarify how they can assign or understand each other in terms of the laws and the responsibilities. Let's take it, you want to maybe we want to coach the players so that they should understand it in a simpler way to avoid confusion during the game. That's my question. Thank you. I don't know if you have getting the question correct.
Yes, it's fine, Aaron. It's a good question. Thank you. So it depends where we lose the ball. So from transition to defend point of view, it would really depend rather in relation to where we lost the ball. So say we lost the ball here, the attacking midfielder, the closest attacking midfielder, they would need to press. Everyone behind, it's their responsibility to close the space so that this player is under pressure straight away. But also if they try and play the forward pass, lost my ball, they try and play the forward pass, the spaces behind are closed. If we don't do that, if we just stick to our shape, then it becomes easy for the opposition to then play around us and then through us. So player closest to the ball, and it was usually the attacking midfielder, it was their responsibility to press. Everyone else's responsibility was to close the space and not stick to a defined structure. So it was really clear, really simple. And when I say close the space, I mean we need to do something like this to make a wide defensive triangle. So I mentioned triangles earlier on. Maybe that's not realistic, but so everyone needs to be in a triangle. This was a simple principle we had. So if that player went to press, we have a triangle behind them so that that space is covered. If that player was still here and that player was still here, for example, I know it's a bit of a false example, but we don't have a triangle here and we're not closing this space. And that player could then play that pass to then turn and drive at us or turn and get out. So on pressing, the player who presses must have two players behind them to form that defensive triangle. I hope that makes sense. I've just thrown that in there and not mentioned it earlier on, but that's the principle we had for pressing the ball. On a transition to attack point of view, so say the opposition gave the ball away, it went to our centre half. Can we get free? Can we get free? If we can't get free, these two players have to be positionally disciplined as an option to then be a link player to play the ball forward. If these players get on the ball in this area, then it's game over for the opposition as far as I'm concerned, because if these players get turned and are driving at a back four, the back four are going to make a mistake, and we were good enough to capitalise on that, especially if we could get this player on the ball 30 yards out or even in the box. My rules for transition to attack were if the opposition, this is not a very good example, but if the opposition give the ball away, and we're facing forward, can we get a runner going forward? Can we get someone in space? That was the first principle. If the opposition, for example, gave the ball away here and this player was marked and they weren't facing forward, then we need to get someone who is facing forward on the ball. So if that player played that player made a forward run into space, that ball would be played in there as quickly as possible. So I'll caveat what I've said with it just depends where the ball is given away and what position on the park the opposition have it or we have it. But my principles for defending were don't press unless you've got two players behind you to form that defensive pressing triangle to cover the spaces behind the presser. And on the transition to attack, can we find someone facing forward on the first pass or the second pass to play the ball forward to someone who is either in space or running forward? Really simple, really clear for the players, and we practiced it all the time in training. Does that answer the question, Aaron?
Yes, exactly.
I'm surprised that more teams don't play this formation, Jamie, if I'm being honest.
I think lots of teams have in the past. I think at the moment it's got a bit of a black eye because of Man United and all the attention that gets. I mean, Crystal Palace are doing a fantastic job with it right now. And I think, I mean, you look back at Johan Cruyff at Barcelona. He used to play 3-4-3 quite a lot when he came in there as well, sort of the total football revolution. But there's probably a little bit of a tactical misunderstanding as well. I mean, if you look at a grassroots level, you wouldn't see this executed very well probably a lot of the times. Well, I'm talking about amateur level, adults level is what I'm talking about. People tend to shy away from back three formations because they don't quite understand it. They've probably grown up playing 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1, something of that style. So I think people feel more comfortable in terms of roles and responsibilities. And you've talked about that earlier, like having clear definitions of that's my player, that's my man to mark, my woman to mark. And I think people feel really comfortable with that, where there's probably more grey areas in a back three formation.
A lot of people don't understand that if that wide centre half goes out, then we need to make a back two and have protection at the top end of the park. There's a fantastic video that I have. I showed the players from a defensive point of view. If I do find it, I'll put it in the community. But yeah, it's a really good video. I just want to find it real quick.
While you're looking for that, I think what a lot of people probably don't quite understand or are comfortable with is that you're not defending in a 3-4-2-1, right? So your formations are going to change depending on what stage of the game it is or what's happening in the game. Like you've just shown there, you're probably in a 4-2-3-1 to defend, or a 4-5-1, or even if you are camped deep, you're going to be a back five. So there's going to be different formations and responsibilities for different stages of the game.
See, I think that's what trips a lot of people up. So we've got this way of playing, we've got these set of principles, and we're going to stick to them no matter what. Right? Okay, that's fine, that's great. But what if the opposition come along and they're playing 3-5-2? Some of your centre halves have got two strikers to manage. So you need to give your players some guidance, but you need to also let them have the flexibility to work it out on the park and adjust in real time, because they're the ones on the park. You're the one at the side, and with the greatest respect in the world, you're not going to see everything. And they might be talking to each other. There's 11 of them, and they might be talking to each other and getting a little bit of insight from each other that lets them work it out. And you've got an assistant and maybe another assistant. So there's 11 of them. They might have spotted something you haven't. Let them tactically adjust if they need to. If it's working, you'll quickly see that. And if it's not working, just roll it back. It's as simple as that for me. I think you saw that with successful teams, you know, Chelsea with Lampard and Terry. And I think John Terry's been really honest with that feedback, that he would adjust things on the park as and when needed. And I think that's a really key thing, having a lot of coaches on the park as well as off the park. Can't find this video. I'll pop it in the chat. It's a really good one. It's actually Chelsea defending. It's really disciplined defending in this formation. And I did show it to the players that I had. And I think it really helped us understand that we should not defend the whole width of the pitch. I wish I could find it because I've built it up now. But no, I cannot see it, unfortunately.
We can drop it into the comments of the post when we put the recording out later.
Yeah, I think I'll have to. Apologies, everybody. I thought I had that.
Good. All right. Well, look, that was brilliant.
Maybe I do have it. Maybe I do have it.
Have you found it?
Yeah, maybe. No, I've not. Big build-up. I've not found it. Sorry, everyone.
All right, no problem. Look, that was brilliant. Really, really good conversation. Thank you, mate, and thanks to Ross and Aaron for joining us. We've a bit longer than anticipated, 45 minutes, but it's a really, really good conversation with lots of insight there from the 3-4-2-1 formation and formations in general. So, thanks very much, guys. Have a great day. Thanks for joining, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.